On a private hospital bed in Chicago, Gavin Whitmore, a billionaire who was used to commanding every room he walked into, stared at a stranger like she was the one thing in that building he couldn't buy. She was black, wearing a knit cap and a worn-out coat, holding his hands with yellow cleaning gloves firm, without asking permission, without lowering her eyes. Behind them, the heart monitor blinked green, and that steady beep made the silence feel even heavier. Gavin was pale, out of breath, eyes wide, not just from the pain, but from the way that woman was looking at him, like she could see something not even his doctors had the courage to say out loud. He tried to pull his hand away on instinct. She didn't let go, and that's when Gavin felt something in that touch that changed everything. And in just a few seconds, he was about to open his mouth and make a promise he'd never made to anyone. Before we go on, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? City, state, or country? The man lying in that hospital suite looked like he'd bought even the silence. A billionaire in the investment world, famous for closing deals the way other people slam doors, stared at the ceiling with contained rage and a kind of exhaustion no expensive suit could hide. Gavin Whitmore didn't just have money. He was the kind of rich who made everyone in the room weigh their words before they breathed. And yet here he was, pale, hollow-eyed, hooked up to a mess of wires, like his own body had finally decided to stop obeying. Around him, the same ritual as always. Private doctors, a lawyer in the corner, furiously typing messages. Two assistants whispering about logistics, like his illness was just a scheduling problem. The clean smell of antiseptic fought with expensive cologne someone had sprayed in the air, trying to cover up the fear. Gavin watched every single one of them the way he evaluated employees, and when he realized nobody had a definitive answer, that crooked little smile appeared. It wasn't a smile that asked for help. It was a smile that provoked. That's when she walked in. A woman with a simple look, everyday clothes, no white coat, no shiny badge, none of that anxious rush of someone trying to impress. She stopped near the door, like she'd been invited by destiny, not by the receptionist. Mara Ellis, a volunteer from a small neighborhood church known for visiting sick people without making a fuss, didn't come with rehearsed speeches or a savior posture. She came with quiet. And that calm, inside a room built for control, felt almost offensive, because powerful people aren't used to someone who doesn't bow. Gavin let out a short, dry laugh, more for the audience than for her. "So this is it?" he said, glancing at his own doctors like he was watching a very expensive joke. His voice came out strong, but there was a tremor hidden underneath, like metal hitting glass. He looked Mara up and down, calculating what he could buy in her. And in the same tone he'd used to humiliate a waiter, he threw out the sentence as a challenge. "If you heal me, I'll give you $3 million. The room froze for a second, everyone waiting for her reaction, like they were watching for a stumble. Mara didn't stumble. She didn't even raise an eyebrow. She took one more step, just enough so she could be heard without raising her voice, and answered like she was putting a glass of water back on the table. "Then get the transfer ready." That was it. No drama, no fear. Just this quiet firmness that tears arrogance down without a single shout. If you like stories that start with powerful people thinking they control everything and end by proving there are things money can touch, hit subscribe and stay with me, because this kind of human collision always leaves a mark. Gavin's laugh died in the air, and the first thing anyone heard was the relentless beep of the monitor, like it was counting a truth nobody wanted to face. He tried to hold on to the mockery, but his eyes betrayed a new, uncomfortable doubt, almost childish. She meant that? And Mara, without rushing, without asking permission from the room, full of luxury, walked closer to the bed, like she was stepping into a place where money had no authority at all. And for the first time that night, even the doctors held their breath, because the temperature in that room of pride was about to change. The room looked like a stage built to worship a man who refused to lose. The light was soft, indirect, expensive. But it couldn't hide Gavin Whitmore's tired face or his irritation with every beep from the monitor. At his bedside, a gray-haired doctor carefully explained numbers and possibilities, like he was talking to someone who could fire the illness itself. Near the window, the lawyer kept typing, and two discreet bodyguards stood watch as if death needed an appointment to walk in. And Gavin, at the center of it all, still clung to what was left of his pride. A hard stare, clenched jaw, the posture of a man who gives orders even from a hospital bed. When Mara Ellis took a few more steps into the room, the atmosphere shifted in a way nobody could explain. She didn't smell like expensive perfume. She had no briefcase. No expert posture. Just a quiet presence and a courage that didn't ask permission. The doctor looked at her with the discomfort of someone who doesn't like people who are off protocol. Gavin pushed out an expression of indifference, but his eyes followed every move she made, not because he believed in her, but because he hated not being in control. Mara stopped by the bed, took in the wires, the carefully arranged luxury, and seemed to notice something nobody else in that room had the guts to put into words. She didn't open with a pretty line. She didn't ask, "How are you feeling?" She just rested her hand on the edge of the mattress near his chest, like she was asking the whole room to be quiet. Gavin frowned, ready to toss out another jab, but his voice failed for a split second. Her hand moved up slowly and settled over his chest, not like a trick, not like a performance, like someone touching a wound you can't see. The doctor instinctively stepped forward. The lawyer stopped typing, and even one of the bodyguards glanced over, uncomfortable, because that simplicity was invading territory where only money usually had a voice. The heart monitor, which had been sliding up and down with small variations, changed its rhythm. It wasn't some movie miracle, with light pouring in from the ceiling. It was more unsettling than that. It was subtle. The numbers started to stabilize. The beeps grew more regular. A quiet but very real improvement, enough to leave the doctor speechless for half a second. And a highly paid doctor doesn't go speechless easily. Gavin felt it before anyone else, because it was his body. In that instant, his expression changed. Arrogance stepped back, and a raw, almost offensive kind of doubt for a man like him took its place. Mara didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She simply kept her hand there and met his eyes like she was saying without words, "Are you really going to play games with this?" The weird part was, when that change came, it didn't feel like she'd fixed an organ. It felt like she de-poked something inside him that had been locked away for far too long. Gavin swallowed hard, feeling a fear that didn't come from the illness. It came from the possibility that someone was finally seeing him from the inside out. And that's when Mara leaned in just a little, as if she were about to say the first truth nobody in that room had dared speak. And her next sentence was going to hurt more than any diagnosis. The silence after the numbers stabilized was strange. It wasn't a silence of respect. It was the silence of people trying to figure out if they really seen what they thought they'd seen. The doctor cleared his throat, checked the monitor, rechecked the blood pressure, checked the oxygen saturation, like he was hunting for a flaw in his own reasoning. The lawyer, who until then seemed to live inside his phone in legal clauses, stood frozen with the screen in his hand, too afraid to interrupt. And Gavin Whitmore, for the first time since this crisis began, didn't have a smart remark ready. Mara kept her hand on his chest for a few more seconds, then slowly lifted it away, as if she didn't want to startle him. She pulled up the chair and sat down beside the bed without asking permission. And still, nobody dared tell her to leave. Gavin followed the movement with his eyes, bothered by the fact that he was cooperating with her presence. He tried to grab back some control using sarcasm. "So? That's it?" he muttered. "Some stage trick? You gonna ask me for a church donation now?" He was aiming for mockery, but the words came out weak. His tone betrayed something he hated: curiosity. Mara looked at him calmly, but not with pity. with firmness. The kind you only get after seeing a lot of rich people crack from the inside and blame it on stress. "You want a pretty answer?" she asked softly. "Because I don't have one," Gavin smirked. "What I want is to walk out of here." Mara tilted her head slightly, like she'd just decided to stop walking in circles. Her voice stayed low but turned sharper. "What's killing you doesn't show up on the scans." The sentence hit him like a physical blow. Gavin sucked in a breath, as if someone had squeezed his chest from the inside. He tried to fire back, but his throat closed. The doctor stepped in, irritated. "With all due respect, Mara raised one hand, no aggression, and he stopped. That alone was almost absurd. A professional used to commanding operating rooms going quiet because of a simple gesture. Mara turned her eyes back to Gavin. "You've got too many people around you, and somehow you're still alone. You control numbers, contracts, people, but you can't control that emptiness in here." She tapped her own chest, not his. "Your body's just getting loud because no one wanted to listen to the rest." Gavin turned his face away, angry, like he'd just been slapped. His hand shook on the blanket. "You don't know me," he muttered. Mara nodded once. "I know enough. I saw the way you talk to everyone in here. I saw how you try to buy even the air you breathe. And I saw something you won't admit even to yourself. You're afraid. Not of dying, but of dying without anyone truly loving you." Heat crept up Gavin's neck. It wasn't shame about being sick. It was the shame of being read like an open book in front of people who always feared him. For a moment, he seemed smaller. The billionaire who humiliated people for sport lay there, stuck in a bed, facing a truth he had no idea how to process with money. The monitor started to wobble again, like it was echoing his heart's agitation. That's when Mara leaned in a little closer, like she was about to start something he wouldn't be able to undo. "If you want to get better," she said, "you're going to have to stop fighting everything and learn how to surrender." Gavin's eyes widened, and the first tear clung stubbornly to his lashes without falling, because his healing was about to begin, and he had no idea how much it was going to hurt. The first tear didn't fall like in a movie. It just hung there, trembling at the corner of Gavin Whitmore's eye, like even crying was too expensive for his pride to afford. He turned his head, breathing through his mouth, trying to swallow everything the same way he'd swallowed half his life. But the room didn't cooperate. The monitor beeped faster, more irregular, like his body had decided to sigh everything he'd stuffed down for years. The doctor stepped closer, ready to adjust a medication, and Mara simply said, without raising her voice, "Let it be." "This part's on him." Gavin forced out a short, nervous laugh. "You really like drama, don't you?" Except the last word cracked. He blinked hard, and that first tear finally fell. Then another, and his face flushed red, more from anger than sadness. Angry at being weak. Angry at not having a quick exit. Angry at the fact that, for the first time, someone in that room was not afraid of him. "You have no idea what I've had to carry," he growled, voice rough. Mara didn't argue. She just leaned in slightly, as if listening to something alive. "I don't need to know everything," she said. "I just need to know if you're going to keep pretending, or if you're actually going to live." He clenched the blanket, as if this was a physical fight. "I ran everything," Gavin whispered. "Everything. I made people tremble. I made people apologize for things that weren't even their fault." His eyes shone, and his pride tried to twist that into contempt. "And it worked," Mara nodded slowly. "It worked. To leave you alone." The word "alone" slid in like a needle. His chest rose and fell faster, and the monitor followed, stubborn. Gavin looked at the doctor, then at the lawyer, then at the guards. For the first time, he actually saw it. Every person in that room was there because of obligation, contract, salary, not love. Mara rested her hand on the bed rail, close to his fingers, but not touching, giving him space. Healing doesn't show up when you bark orders, she said quietly. It starts the moment you surrender. Gavin gave a humorless chuckle. Surrender to what? God? Guilt? Some woman I don't even know? Mara held his gaze. Surrender to the truth. Admit you hurt people. Admit you got lost. And admit you can't buy peace with threats. Gavin swallowed hard. The doctor tried to step in. This could agitate the patient. Mara didn't even look his way. He's been agitated for years. His body just got tired of lying about it. Right then, Gavin did something nobody in that room had imagined they'd ever see. He turned his head toward the doctor, the same man he'd treated like hired help, and his voice came out small, almost childlike. I'm sorry, he said, tripping over the words like he was walking on unknown ground. The doctor froze. Gavin turned to the lawyer. You too. I used you as a shield and treated you like trash. The lawyer opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Gavin took a shaky breath, and the tears came harder, washing away that carefully built hard mask. He looked toward the corner where a cleaning lady had slipped in quietly and stopped, waiting for the usual orders. He saw the plain uniform, the bucket, her lowered head. I'm sorry, he said to her, and the woman clapped a hand over her mouth, stunned, like she was witnessing something impossible. And the strangest part? With every apology, the monitor responded. The beep grew more regular. His pressure leveled. His breathing slowed. It was as if his body was finally relaxing because he'd stopped fighting his own conscience. Gavin trembled, not from physical weakness, but from emotional humiliation, the kind that cleans instead of destroying. Mara watched it all without hurry, and when he finally ran out of words, she leaned in and dropped the line that changed the air in the room. Now you ready to hear what I'm going to ask? Gavin lifted his eyes, startled, because he realized this wasn't to the end. It was the beginning of what was going to transform his life that very night. The room didn't suddenly become happy. It became lighter in a strange way, like someone had opened a window nobody knew was there. Gavin Whitmore's face was still damp, his breathing still evening out, and his pride. Well, his pride was quiet for the first time. He looked around, not like the owner of the space, but like a man who just realized he spent years defending himself against the world. The doctor stayed back, watching, not interrupting. The lawyer still held his phone like a shield, as if he were waiting for any kind of order to retreat back into the safe territory of control. Mara stood next to the bed with no rush, as if waiting for him to finish really seeing himself. Her voice came low and firm. I didn't come here to promise you a long life. Gavin frowned, as if that were an insult. Mara went on. I came to remind you that living longer won't matter if you stay the same. He exhaled, a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob, and stared at his own hands. The same hands that had signed deals worth millions were now shaking for one simple reason. He was afraid of going back to who he was. She nodded toward the table where his phone lay. Your line was clear. 3 million. Gavin swallowed. It wasn't the money itself. It was what that money represented. It was his last anchor. The lawyer, suddenly alert, stepped closer like he was stepping onto glass. Gavin didn't look at anyone. Do the transfer? No. The lawyer unlocked the phone, opened the banking app, and started an instant wire. The screen lit Gavin's face for a moment, a cold, clinical glow against a scene that was painfully human. When the confirmation popped up, the lawyer turned the phone toward him, waiting for the old Gavin to nod like a king approving one more transaction. Gavin only nodded once, eyes locked on Mara. "Done," he said, sounding exhausted from winning all his life. Mara glanced at the screen, not with greed, but like she recognized a necessary step. Then she said the line that made his whole body tense again. "Now for the other part." He blinked. "Other part?" Mara tilted her head slightly, as if to say, "You really thought it was just about money?" She stepped in close enough for only him to hear. "You never use your money to humiliate anyone again," she said. "No shouting, no sugarcoating, not to crush them, not to buy their silence, not to feel above them." Gavin's instinct was to deflect with sarcasm, to negotiate, but nothing came. He looked at the doctor, the lawyer, the cleaning lady at the door, and for a moment, it was like seeing his own life in miniature. Him at the top, everyone else below. "And if I fail?" Gavin asked, voice barely there. Mara held his gaze. "You're going to fail at something, because you're human. The difference is what you do next." Gavin breathed in deeply, and another piece of him, the piece that always needed control, cracked. He nodded once, like a man signing a painful contract. If this part hit you in a strange way, tell me later in the comments what moved you more, his shame, his apologies, or this promise you can't buy. Mara reached for her bag without hurry, like someone who knows when to leave before people turn her into an idol. Gavin lifted his hand impulsively, as if he wanted to hold on to the moment. I don't even really know your last name," he said, sounding almost desperate, trying to grab his sense of control back. Mara gave him one last look. "You don't need my last name," she said softly. "You just need to remember what you felt when you stopped giving orders." And as she turned toward the door, Gavin realized something that wouldn't let him rest. The healing he was feeling didn't feel like magic. It felt like consequence. And outside that room, the real world was waiting to test whether he could keep the hardest part of the deal. 2 days later, the suite was the same expensive lighting, same overly clean scent, same wires. But Gavin Whitmore no longer filled the space the same way. He woke up and instead of asking for reports, spent a few seconds just staring at the ceiling, as if he were relearning how to breathe without needing to own everything. The doctor stepped in early with his clipboard, ready for demands, and found a different Gavin, still sharp but quieter. "How are you feeling?" The doctor asked carefully. Gavin took his time answering, and when he did, it wasn't about chest pain. Like someone who spent years in a crowded house and still lived alone, he said. The hospital was St. Augustine Medical Center, a wing where everything looked designed to soothe powerful people. Neutral walls, huge windows, controlled quiet. But now Gavin was starting to notice what the luxury couldn't hide. The way people slipped in and out of his room without meeting his eyes, like he was dangerous. He began picking up on details he'd always ignored. The cleaner's hand shaking as she emptied the trash. The nurse asking permission with a careful voice, the way everyone seemed to shrink when his expression hardened. And for the first time, that didn't give him satisfaction. It gave him shame. Not that loud, theatrical shame, a quiet one that twists your stomach. That afternoon, he asked for his phone. The lawyer stepped up, confident, expecting a war order. Gavin stared at the screen and said, "I want a list. Today, of every internal complaint that got buried because I said so." The lawyer blinked, confused. Gavin went on, voice steady but strict of venom. "And tell the board I'm stepping back for a while. Not to rest. To fix what I wrecked." He made 2 more short calls. One to the executive team demanding a fully independent audit. Another to HR, making it clear that nobody else would be treated as disposable for performance. People on the other end thought it was strategy. Gavin knew it was something else. Fear of becoming the man he was before. Before discharge, he tried to track down Mara Ellis. He asked the nurse. He asked at the desk. He even asked the security guard in the hallway, awkwardly dependent on other people. Nobody really knew. They said she came and went, like someone who drops something priceless on a doorstep and keeps walking. Gavin stood at his doorway for a long moment, staring at the empty corridor, irritated by something new. Not at her, but at the fact that he couldn't pay to have that presence back whenever he wanted. He left an envelope with a simple letter at the front desk. No flashy signature, just one request. If she ever comes back here, please give this to her. When he ended up alone again, he realized maybe that was the point. She hadn't shown up to become part of his life. She'd shown up to rip the mask off. When Gavin finally walked across the hospital lobby, his body still felt fragile, but his posture was no longer that of an untouchable man. The driver opened the car door, and a hospital employee murmured to another, "That guy wasn't supposed to last the week." Gavin heard it. Instead of being offended, he paused for a second, as if paying respect to what almost happened. The doctor came to say goodbye, and Gavin shook his hand firmly, looking him in the eye. "How did you make it through this?" the doctor asked, half under his breath, still trying to understand the impossible. Gavin drew a slow breath and answered without theatrics, "Because I found out money runs everything, until it runs into something bigger." And right there, standing in front of those glass doors, with the world waiting outside, he understood. The hospital had only been the beginning. The real test would start when nobody was watching. Later that night, when the hospital lights dimmed and the hallways slipped back into that strange midnight quiet, Gavin Whitmore no longer looked like the man who Dee walked in, thinking he could command even his own death. He still had money, still had a name, still had power, but something inside had shifted places. It wasn't a storybook, happy ending. It was something stranger. A rich man realizing, late in the game, that what was killing him fastest wasn't his body. It was the way he'd been living. Somewhere along the way, he understood that the promise he'd made wasn't payment. It was a boundary, a line drawn for himself. Never again used money as a weapon. And that sticks in your mind because it's simple. When you humiliate someone, you don't shrink them. You reveal who you are. Gavin left that bed with a fragile chest and a brand new kind of shame, and a rare chance to do things differently while there was still time. Now I want to ask you honestly, if you were in his place, would you have swallowed your pride and asked for forgiveness? And if you were in hers, would you have reached out your hand or turned your face away? Tell me in the comments which part hit you the hardest. If this story touched you, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Because here, we don't talk about wealth for the sparkle. We talk about what it reveals when nobody's watching.